Matt, first of all, from Tesco's point of view, I mean, what is the impact of the internet on Tesco, which is a vast-scaled business that relies on masses of stores as people get used to shopping online?
Well, I think the impact's been really significant, and all of you will have noticed the evolution and changes that we've made to our core business over the last couple of years. And I think you can talk about the impact in lots of different ways. So I think the first is a reconfiguration of our business to serve that new connected customer. So what we're finding is that increasingly the customer of today is shopping across a range of different environments and formats. So what we're starting to do as a business is to think about what that means into the future. And that means new services, so things like click and collect. That means adding value to our existing store footprint. So, larger stores have to become different experiences. And it also means that we have to put new skills into our business to enable the people we employ to make a difference to that customer. So I think the key thing for us really is how do you embrace and join up the world that increasingly the customer is joining up on their own basis. And of course that's exciting, but it also presents lots of challenges as you try to think about how do you retool your talent, where do you invest your capital, how do you do the things that matter to ensure that you stay relevant over the next 10 years.
And what does it basically mean for the stores? I mean, haven't you ended up halting a big store build?
Yeah, we did. We made a choice to slow down our expansion plans. And that's really about where do you want to put your capital. And increasingly what we're trying to do is balance concrete versus the cloud, which is that what we've decided to do is to try and take the money that we have and valuably invest that in the assets that we already have. So you're
going to be warehouses rather than
shops?
Is that where the jobs are going to be?
No, it'll be a blend of things. So, increasingly what we're doing is rolling out things like click and collect. So it means rather than somebody being in the store, they'll be in a click and collect centre serving a drive-through customer who's doing that because it's more convenient. It might be that somebody is, powering a more connected customer service desk. So it's about new skills on the basis of that customer we see. So what we have to do is we have to think about the money we've got and try and reallocate it into those assets that we've got to reconfigure them so that they're right for the future.
And does that mean a more skilled workforce or just different skills? Or
I think it's a mixture of both. We're quite a broad business in the sense that we need new skills in technology and search and mobile. That's why we've invested in building this new kind of technology capability in London. We need new skills in the call centre to deal with the connected customer, and we need new skills in store to be able to serve that customer. So, it does mean, we're recruiting another 20,000 people in Britain this year, and they're going into different.
No, it would have been had you gone ahead with these 100 stores, or I mean, what is the impact on the number of people you're hiring?
No, I mean, if you looked feasibly at the 100 stores and you rolled forward, it would have taken some time for us to build them. So 20,000 jobs is more than we would have planned to do. And it's just about making sure that those jobs go into our current design in a way that's helpful based on where we see the future.
Julie, let me just bring you in at this stage. I mean, your business model is really interesting. I mean, just tell us about it first, because you sort of started as an online.
I think you're flattering us to say we had a business model. What we had is something that I think a lot of people can relate to, and that was I really needed to make money to make my family's life better, and I wasn't going to look to anybody else to fix that. So I needed to start a business that would mean that my children went to a fantastic school, and that was my mission. I had £600, 8 weeks in a computer in the kitchen, so we didn't really have a business model.
But well, tell us what happened then. You started selling online?
Yes, started selling online because I had a Google AdWords voucher that fell out of a magazine. So it's £50. Who's going to turn their back on that? So it's a way into the advertising world that's very accessible. And I read this great book, Guerrilla Marketing, and it said that I needed to find 5 different ways to approach it. This is probably awful for somebody who knows about marketing to see how hacks can get into these sort of things.
I think you probably do know quite a lot about marketing.
And I used the home printer to create little leaflets to leave at doctors' surgeries and school places, and I went on every free directory on the internet that I could find. And I set myself a goal of, well, first I had to create a website, and I did that with a free online Microsoft course. 2 nights to do the course, 3rd night to do the website. And then I emailed 300 emails a day, which isn't really as hard as it sounds because there's that whole cut and paste thing going. But, you know, so you've got newspaper editors and lifestyle editors and fashion bloggers. And if you're really determined enough, and for me it was about, you know, my children, so I was really determined. It's like a ferret going after this thing. So not many people got away from the Cambridge Satchel Company marketing campaign.
But you've now opened a shop.
Yes.
What is the real point of that shop? Is it to sell satchels, or is it part of your branding and marketing now?
Well, that's
as
right,
much as
because
anything?
now,
I mean,
you know, it's 4.5 years, not even 5 years on, and that £600 has created turnover of 15 million a year. So part of it was for us, I'm very determined to keep all our manufacturing in the UK. That's non-negotiable for us. And so I needed to make production easier to handle. And luckily, I came across somebody who knows all about fashion and could really sort of fill a deficit in what we knew. And he said that all the big fashion houses go to this forward ordering things. That's why they had fashion weeks. I didn't know that's why they had fashion weeks, but that's why they have fashion weeks. Because then all the big buyers go to one place and you can meet them, get your ordering, and get all your production scheduled, you know, in an easy way. And so it became quite expensive for us to try and get a presence at fashion weeks. And so the amount of money that I was going to spend on a showroom during, you know, all of the fashion weeks in London, that just about covers the rent that we pay on our Covent Garden store. And
so it is exactly the sort of the inverse position, isn't it, between the two? Because on big established stores like Tesco, the online store was a relatively small thing that is now growing. And for you, the physical shop is presumably... What's the proportion of sales, if you like, between online and the shop and the physical shop?
Our London shop that opened just before Christmas, it is almost matching our website. I mean, we had very low targets that we needed to reach to have it work. But the targets, we're getting sort of 5 times what we set for the store. We've even had the CEO of J. Crew and his entourage in our store. And it's a really, really small store. So, but I think that when your resources are a little more scarce and you think about money as, you know, something that isn't going to go to this department and that department, you need to make it work. And so it's a small store, but it's brilliant.
And how many people do you employ?
We now have about 93.
And how do you divide that?
They're not in my kitchen anymore.
How do you divide that between online and the physical shop?
I started a factory to keep up with demand, and so about half of them are in the factory. And so, and then we've got about 30, 35 that are in Cambridge, and we don't really make that huge, that much distinction.
Okay. Tom, where does this leave you? You know, it's not as simple as the internet's bad for jobs.
No, not at all, actually. It's in some ways it's much more complicated than that, because actually I think that the trend across the entire economy is for jobs to become more skilled, more qualified, but not necessarily better paid. And that's really where the trade unions come in, because part of our job, I think, is to, on the one hand, help people to gain those qualifications, not least so that they can work in this new internet age, for example, with Tesco's, but also to make sure that when they do, they're properly paid and rewarded for that. So it's a very interesting time that we're living in, I think, because unions are really doing far, far more in this whole area of learning and skills than they've ever done before. I mean, last year, for example, Union Learn, the organisation that I run for the TUC, introduced about 250,000 people to learning who would not have had that learning, those opportunities to learn, but for their union. Now, 250,000 is equivalent to a good number of colleges and universities. And we're doing that quietly, just getting on with it, working with employers like Tesco's, by the way, which is a very, very good employer on this and has a good, strong relationship with their trade union, USDOR. But part of what that's about, I think, is creating, on the one hand, the appetite and the opportunity to learn those new skills, but on the other hand, trying to encourage and support and help companies to be a bit more imaginative, a bit more ambitious about the kind of jobs and the kind of business model that they're prepared to offer.
And do you think high street jobs are going to go? And if so, when?
No, I don't actually. If you look at the high street, it's changing radically. But the kinds of jobs that people do there, they're certainly changing radically too, but there are still jobs on the high street, but they're doing very different things. So, for example, there used to be perhaps, a cafe that was a bit of a greasy spoon. Now it's not like that. It'll be a much more high-end cafe selling different kinds of coffees and all the rest of it. It might well be a Wi-Fi free zone internet cafe. So the people working in that cafe will need far more skills than when they were just serving, bacon and eggs and a mug of tea or something.
And is that realistic? I mean, is Britain where it needs to be to deliver those skills?
No, not yet, but it's getting there, I think. And it's getting there, I would say, partly with the strong support and help of the trade union movement, which is across the country, working with employers who want to kind of raise their skills and raise their aspirations in this way.
Okay, you like Tesco. What do you think about Amazon?
Well, we wish they'd pay their taxes. By the way, I'd say the same about Google. You wouldn't expect somebody from the TEC not to say that, and I'll say it loud and clear, that we do think Google should be paying taxes, so should Amazon.
Which taxes do you think they should pay?
Well, I'm not qualified to get into that debate.
Right, okay.
But what I would say is I would endorse what Ed Miliband just said, which is that a company that's making billions should be paying in taxes in this country a somewhat higher proportion than it currently is. Now, I don't know how exactly that's done. And one thing I would also say is that the thousands of people who work for Google in this country and do a great job and are proud of the work they do, and it is a great company in many ways, and they do a great job, they too want to work for a company that is socially responsible.
But I mean, in terms of employment practices and the kinds of jobs that are available, if you take a company like Amazon, and if shopping is moving that way generally, there will be other entrants into sort of big warehousing type models where there's no physical shop. What does that mean for the workforce? And what does that mean for people school leavers at the bottom who would normally go and look for the job on the till?
Well, I think it's a very good question, because the reality is that there are very, very few jobs left in this country which are open to people with no qualifications. Very few. Almost any job you can think of requires at least a level 2, which is roughly equivalent to GCSE. And very often that kind of skill level is associated with, say, customer service or handling the internet or managing computing in different ways. So to come back to your question, the really important thing is that we equip young people with those skills before they enter the job market, so they've got a good chance of getting a decent job. And when they're in the job market, working for Amazon, working for other companies, they then have opportunities to move on, to progress, to grow, and that's partly because, the trade union movement strongly supports people who want to sort of move on and up in work, but also because jobs change. And it's really important that appetite, that flexibility, that adaptability for change continues throughout a company's working life.
Henry, let me begin with you with a question from the app. And do use this, by the way. I will use them, and identify yourselves if you will. It was actually referring to what Matt said, which said Tesco was slowing its bricks and mortar expansion. We have to assume this will happen for all retailers and lead to a property disinvestment. What future for the high street? Is it an exhibition space?
Well, I think it's interesting because people love, and as trend watchers, we're guilty of it as well. We love to kind of fetishise the new, and suddenly e-commerce is going to sweep away everything that was before. But of course we've heard it's not, and Julie's opening a store, Google are rumoured to be opening a store as well. Amazon also rumoured to be opening physical stores. And of course there's a shift. But I think, this idea that e-commerce is suddenly going to decimate the high street and, it's only going to be latte bars and people working on their laptops, is a bit of a simplistic one. And when we look at consumers, how consumers have been changed by e-commerce, because of course they have been changed by e-commerce. Consumer expectations have been changed. When you go into a store, you're not just looking, to buy the product. You can have all this information. You can pull out your phone and get price comparison. You can see if it's a good product. You can check out those reviews. But it's a lot easier to bring those online expectations into the physical world and for consumers in the store to have all of that information that they're used to online. It's a lot easier to bring that into the offline world than it is for online retailers to replicate the physical world, if you see what I'm saying. So you know, there's a reason why online retailers want to get onto the high street, is because there are certain elements of that shopping experience, the touch, you know, the actual experience, that you can't recreate. You know, have you ever been on an online 3D store where you can walk around in your web browser and look at products? I mean, they're terrible.
But so, I mean, what you are saying is that the high street does become basically an exhibition space and a showroom where you can go and touch and see and try things out.
Well, you know, it shrinks, right? But it's not purely. I think, you know, this idea that you know, Tesco's famously.
I mean, not for food. I mean, but necessarily, but for other, you know, for satchels and electronic goods and anything else. I mean,
well, as Julie said, you know, they're doing sales nearly matching the website. Yeah, I think that's a fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we see. So, you know, going back to the question about property disinvestment, I don't think that is the case. I think it's just a change in the way that you spend that money. So, on one hand, we're seeing the rise around the world of kind of experiential shopping. You know, you want to go to somewhere, you want it to be nice, you want to perhaps have lunch there, have a coffee, and you want to browse some great product. And environments like that are growing. The question for us is that we don't have enough environments like that, so we want to put more money into creating spaces like that actually, you know, make a difference and contribute to the environment in which they're in. And then on the other hand, what we're seeing in the high street is the rise of convenience. And what we find is where you have a high street that's vibrant, it's got a good convenience offer, and it's got surrounded by great companies, then it grows and it prospers. So I think the point is that what we have to do is we have to hold those two things in our hands and do them both well. And clearly doing them will require new sets of skills. You know, we'll need new design skills, we'll need new technology skills, we'll need new fabric in our stores to help the customer get what they want. So it's much more a case of reinvesting the money based on what we see. And what we're seeing is that both of those things are increasingly happening around the world and very much in the UK as well.
I mean, this morning started with the Bionic Man.
Yeah.
If you put all this together, I mean, would you ever put robots into Tesco? Front of house?
Somebody might say we already have them.
Isn't self-checkout making us the robots?
That's quite close to a Gerald Ratner comment, isn't it? But, that's quite
well, yeah, I thought I might say it before you did.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad you did.
I think the point is that, you know, what we already have technology in all our stores and great people in all our stores.
That's too late now.
No, but think about this. So we have self-checkout at the moment, right? So self-checkout is a way of enabling the customer with that mission to get in and out of the store really efficiently and really effectively. But what we also find is that most people, and I would hazard a guess most people in this room, also like, on occasion, to get great service from a human being. And it's the blend of those two things that I think we'll see. And whether that means that the self-checkout becomes more intelligent, more helpful, that it talks to you or recognises you, I think that's a likely outcome of the technology that we're seeing.
Are you relaxed about automation?
Well, I think part of the problem is that lots of people who work in stores, including Tesco's and others, feel that they are treated like robots. And that they have to work in very, very limited and constrained ways according to our other tick boxing. And one of the great things about technology is it liberates people from that, and it allows people to be much more creative and perhaps have an expanded job role, which is more interesting. And the automated checkouts is really interesting.
Not if your job in an internet business is to go and get the thing off shelf 37B.
But that's the point. Those jobs are changing. And if you look at Tesco's, to take the example of the automated checkout, people used to work on a checkout, simply scanning items, a pretty boring job. Now, they've got a much more interesting job looking after a number of those small machines that do the automatic checkout, and they're helping people, talking to people in different ways. It's a more interesting and it's a much higher skilled job.
Can I just ask a question? I think it's more dangerous when we start treating our customers like robots. You know, I think that's the thing. One of the reasons why we've done so well is we engage so heavily with our customers. You know, from the early days, if somebody ordered from my website, I'd be all over that email address, seeing where they worked and writing in saying, can you spread the word? Are there other people like you that might like the bags? And then after sending the bag saying, did you like it? Where did you wear it? Do you want to send me a photograph? And we engage so heavily with our customers that we have such a strong and loyal following. When they come into the shop, they try it on, and if the strap is too long, we just put another hole in it for them. You know, but we don't think that there's going to be one bag, just come in, get your bag, get out as quick as you can. That's where we learn about our customers.
This is what Tesco's are trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think
track
that.
me down.
Well, that's the point between Tom and Julie, which is if you use the technology to free the colleague to serve the customer better, you get a better outcome. And that's the way that we're thinking about technology, is to try and unlock somebody in the store to be able to do what matters for the customer, to be more helpful, to serve, to listen, to understand, to know more about wine, to know more about produce. And that, I think, is what technology is going to help us do. Not, I think, to automate things that we think can create, you know, more efficiency in the store and remove the contact that's an important part of the shopping trip. It's just not the way we see it, I don't think.
Henry, someone asked who watches the trends in trend watching and how do we avoid groupthink?
So trend watching, I mean, our business model, I guess, you know, has an interesting parallel to this. I mean, we have a network of people all around the world who send us tips, basically, spotters we call them, and about 2,500. And it's interesting because, you know, we pay them basically in points, Amazon point. You know, they can redeem it for Amazon vouchers, they can redeem it for iPads, Kindles, things like that. And I think I was at a conference a few weeks ago looking at the sharing economy and collaborative consumption, and that's another huge trend. You know, being able to rent out excess space in your house, rent out your car, and someone made a comment there. I think, you know, in the past people had one job for, you know, 7 years or longer. You know, now you have 7 jobs in your career, and you know, people in the future will have 7 jobs at the same time. And this notion of a job, you know, will become increasingly fragmented. You know, you will be able to earn money from your interests, from your assets. You know, if you have something you can rent out when you're not using it. So I think this idea that, you know, jobs will become something that is just given to you, that you turn up and you work 9 to 5. You know, jobs are often things you can take, as Julie found out.